All right, here we are on another NovNov. It's 11:11 and I have no energy because I had to fix a fence today. I am very much a digital person and not like an in-person person. So sorry if I'm a little slower today or if I make some mistakes, but hey, it's NovNov, so it's to be expected. As an update, after a little over 24 hours on AdGuard, my home network, we are sitting at almost 40,000 queries with still about 22% of those being blocked by filters. It is wild to see that in a day, 8,000, 8,713 requests were tied to telemetry, advertising, or malicious marketing domains. So that is always crazy. Anyway, let's get away from that. We are on NovNov2, remoted in as S. Smith, and we are going to be going over some Bash or Born Again Shell stuff, some scripting, and I might leave you guys with a challenge depending on how we're feeling. But it is important to know if you're following along hands-on keyboard and you've done the AdGuard demo as well, NovNov2 is the jump server to NovNov AdGuard. So if you break this, you are not just breaking one server. So be careful in what you do. Take your time, work through things, click less, read more. I say that very frequently to students, but anyway, let's get right into it. So Bash, or the Born Again shell, is kind of the thing we've been working with, right? It is our shell in a lot of Linux systems. Some systems now use Z shell, which is a different thing. Anyway, that's a tangent that we won't get into. But if you think about running things on your Linux system or even scripting things on the shell, then a lot of times you're going to be thinking of Bash. So a couple of things happen in Bash, and specifically when you get into scripting. But if you guys have ever seen something that looks like, let me just put this at the top of a file. Put that backwards. The shebang, right? And we'll just call the script that we're going to work on. We'll do a test file because that is one that exists, that I'll use as an example. Oh, right, I did touch. My brain is working today, y'all. I meant to do echo right off the bat. We already got an error. All right, testfile.sh. What this is saying is echo the phrase octothorpe exclamation point forward slash bin forward slash bash into testfile.sh. Oh, man, it is. I am struggling today. There we go. So the exclamation point does regularly break strings when you're using double quotes instead of single quotes. That's what I'm going to call that, double quotes instead of single quotes. So if you're ever seeing things like this come up where it's saying that the bash bash isn't found and ben bash isn't found, that could be an issue of your string getting broken by that octothorpe or that exclamation point. Yes, I did call it an octothorpe again because it has 8 points. Also sometimes called a hashtag, a pound symbol, a tic-tac-toe board, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to keep calling it an octothorpe because it's fun. It's like when I was talking about dandified the other day. Anyway, all right, so we now have that, so we can cat our test file, and that is going to be the first line in a lot of bash scripts. And the reason that is this tells the system to run the script using the bash shell. If you guys remember, this is very similar to when I did that and then followed it up with another thing. Let's see if we have that script on here still. It would have been in root, which I can't read, but I can if I give it my password and sudo it. No, it wasn't there either. Oh, that was on NovNov1. Anyway, tangent back. Let's cat that test file again. So this right here tells the system to use the bash shell when running the script. This is similar to when I did bin bash like that and then followed that up with our script that we created. But when we create it inside of it, then we can call it directly and it'll know what to use. So as an example, what we did last time was we echoed echo hello into our script, and then we modified the permission to allow our user to execute the script, which if we do LL or long list, line list, sometimes I call it list with permissions, because it gives us our permissions right there. Dot forward slash script would run it, forward slash bin, forward slash bash script would also run it. The test file.sh, the reason why we're making it a shell script and we're specifying bash is because that makes it easier to automate. It makes it easier to schedule it with a cron job that we probably won't get into today. But that is going to be where that comes in. So bash is our native shell in a lot of Linux systems. And if we call it directly with a script, it'll work, or we can kind of front load it into a script. So if you guys remember, this right here is how we echo hello into a script, how we modify the permissions so that it can run the script, and then running the script was just a dot forward slash or a forward slash bin forward slash bash, and then the script. I'm gonna clear that out. And now we're going to use VI. I hope nobody gets in here and be like, oh, why aren't you using Vim? Why aren't you using Nano? Well, I am using Vim. VI is visual editor. It's a text editor in your command line. It is also actually just visual improved now. So VI visual and Vim visual improved are actually the same thing. But if you do VI to get into a file, you're then going to have to hit I to get into insert mode for like basic use. And then that will let you add more lines. So you have to VI space file name and then hit I so that you get insert mode down here. And then that'll let you type out some stuff. So I'm just going to, I'll throw the source in the video, but this is going to be a script that is not mine. It is just something from GitHub as an example. I figured you guys wouldn't want me to stumble through an entire script on a NovNov video, so we're going to use this one as an example and give credit where credit's due. But the first thing they do in this script is that they are going to specify what it does. So test file, and then they say that this evaluates the status of a file. Just a simple check. So the Octothorpe on its own is a comment and it won't get ran as part of the script. So this second line is just an explanation for those reading what is going to happen. Though it does affect the line numbers, so sometimes comments can affect code if you're calling to specific line numbers. That's like the old thing of like, oh, we deleted a comment and it broke the thing. Well, it could have been because you were bad. Anyway, let's start out by echoing so that we can ask a question. If you're familiar with PowerShell scripting, this would be like read host is our write host is what we're doing. We're just going to say, what is the name of the file? Use absolute path. So as an example, a lot of times absolute path refers to the entire path from root to the file. So that would look something like /home/ Jeff K. Or no, Jeff K doesn't exist on the system. /script would be the absolute path to that script. Whereas the relative path is the next step. So if you are in /home/s/smith, relative path to script would just be script or /script because the dot symbolizes the current directory. So that is a bit of an explanation of what that absolute path means. And we can actually just, I'm going to add that in as an echo so that we can have a reminder as we're going through. I'm not going to put the whole thing in, but I'm also not great at using what is it? What's the word I'm going for here? Um, BI. I don't use it to its full capacity. So if you're seeing this and you're like, you could do so many more easier things than just using your arrow keys to get around. I know, and I could use more than insert mode, but I don't want to. It's not enough. So next up we need to do is read file. This is like getting a answer or a response and then storing it in a variable called file. And then we can use that with some if-else checks. And this part is going to get a little bit more programmatic than I normally go for. But so I'm just going to throw the thing in here chunk by chunk and explain it as we go. So what this says is if file exists, then, so if they put in a valid file, we're going to go ahead and do the thing. So now we need to go down to the next line. And we're going to go in the four spaces, just as like a standard. That might just be me and my Python brain. Um, so now we know if it exists, then if file, then four, 2 through 4, echo, file is a regular file. What this part says is the -f is talking about regular text files or programs. So we'll say regular file or a program file. We're going to do 4 and then fi to close out that if block, just a habit thing. Next up is D for directory. If file is D, and then we can echo file is a directory. Well, same thing, 4 spaces, fi, 4 spaces, and then we can get into file permissions on this as well, is what the original writer did. So if we do if, get back in here, if, what was it, read, ooh, almost dipped it right there, echo, file has read permissions. And we can do the same thing. And actually, since we're just doing the same thing, why don't we just do a little bit of, uh, there we go. 2 through 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 4. If write file, then echo file has write permissions. Last one, if you guys don't remember, it is X for execute. If file, then echo file as execute permissions. Another way to think about this is if R, then the file is readable. If W, then the file is writable. If X, then the file is executable. And that's how the original writer has it on there. I just am a habit for stickler. Fi to close that one out. And then now we need to do our else. Right? So if the file exists, then we can do any of that stuff. Else, echo Fiuli file does not exist. Exit with an error. File, exit, regular. So now we have a giant script here. Let's go ahead and take a look at the whole thing. Calling bin bash at the beginning, bringing up the point of the file after that. Then we have our echo and our explanation of what absolute versus relative path is. Then we read our file, and then we get into a bunch of our variables there. So let's go ahead and save this. To save in VI, you need to hit escape on your keyboard, escape to get out of insert mode, and then colon WQ to write quit. And so now I can go ahead and run this. I could either do // testfile.sh, or I could do bin bash /test file.sh, and you'll see the first one didn't work, but the second one did. And that is because the first one was using the permissions assigned to the user and the file, whereas the script, whereas the second one was just passing the file to bash. So if you don't have permissions to run something and you need to, this could be a workaround. Anyway, let's just use the example right there. Test file line 13. Oh, I forgot to close something out. Uh, let's go ahead and fix that really quick. And then we'll talk about permissions as well. So line 13. It doesn't look like am I missing something? This is what I get for trying to write a script. Just for my sanity's sake, let's go ahead and throw those to there. All right, let's go ahead and see that error message again, see if we can fix it. Oh, gotta click into my shell. I quit. And this time we're just gonna do chmod user plus execute on our test file script. So that if we long list, we can now run this directly instead of having to type it out each time. So we're not getting the error anymore, but it's also still saying that home smith script doesn't exist. But if I do pwd and ls, we'll see that /home /s smith /script is right there. Did I write it wrong? Or does bin, oh, hmm, never do this. But let's try that again. That's my one thought on what it could be, is that I don't have adequate permissions for the shell to be able to read that. No, that's not it. So it's an error in the script itself that I have written. So let's VI back into test file .sh, and let's just pull up the original and I'll compare it line by line. So we start out with bin bash, and then we have our description, and then I have a bunch of other stuff. But we have this part works. So we got down to read file, and then it's our if else logic. that didn't work out correctly. So let's go ahead and take a look there because it's going to else regardless. So if it exists, this is failing. I'm just gonna get rid of the fives because I don't like them. We don't need that many branches, so we don't need to check it every single time. We just need to see what applies. So if it exists, then if it exists, then echo its regular file. Let's see if that works. Unexpected syntax, end of file. Hey, that's a different error. So now we're at least getting a failure. So let's go ahead and go back into that. Let's go ahead and go all the way to the bottom. And what we're going to do in this case is we're just going to clear out everything else with a comment. So what this does is this should make it so that it only does the things that we're expecting. So if file, I'm going to add then echo file exists. Not even going to use the dollar sign to call it. I'm just going to say that the file exists. We'll go ahead and escape colon WQ. So we're still getting unexpected end of file syntax error. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back in. Line 28. I'm going to just remove these exits. We're still getting unexpected end of file, so that is going to be something that we would need to troubleshoot to figure out what's going on here. Let me go ahead and make a note of this. I might not run you guys through this today. Um, but let's see if I can just figure out really quick because we're coming up on 20 minutes. Um, Maybe I can just do test file sh right there. Yeah, it's still doing that. What was that thing? Do we have Docity Unix? No. I don't want to install it. Okay, so that is going to be something coming up from specifically how we are entering it, and I'm not going to make us run through troubleshooting that, but that would be the challenge if you guys want to go deeper into scripting. I know it wasn't the most fun video today because we didn't get like a final ending that looked cool, but it's NovNov, so what do you expect? If I go back into testfile.sh, troubleshooting scripts, figuring out why they're not working is a big part of system administration. It's also a pretty big part of working with Linux in general. So if you're interested in getting into Linux administration, ethical hacking, cloud admin, or anything like that, this is something that I would recommend getting more familiar with. There is a very clear issue that is in here with how it was written. So if you can find that, let me know. And I'll see you guys back again tomorrow for another NovNov where we move on to, I swear finally, something really cool and fun.